essentially are the custodians of this Chartered Accountant South Africa brand. It is a professional accounting qualification, and maybe I'm a bit biased here, being a CA myself, but certainly in our opinion as Chartered Accountants, the CA qualification is regarded as being one of the 8 leading accounting qualifications internationally. SAICA are members of an organization called IFAC, the International Federation of Accountants, which is an organization that essentially provides recommendations to professional accounting bodies around the world. There are over 360 different member bodies of IFAC, and SAICA is one of them. We kind of look at this as the G8 of the accounting world, where you have 8 major international institutions that are regarded as the leaders in chartered accountancy. And this includes the likes of Australia, New Zealand, England and Wales, Ireland, Scotland, Hong Kong, Canada, and South Africa. We personally believe we're in the top 3 of that group of 8. But the significance of that is, as a South African chartered accountant, there's mutual reciprocity between these 8 organizations. So if you are a CA from South Africa, and for example, you immigrate to Canada, then the Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants would welcome you with open arms to become a member of their organization. There would be no additional examinations or conversions or anything like that that you would need to do. You would simply become a member of the Canadian Institute. From a SAICA point of view, they are a voluntary institute, but there's a catch. Because they are custodians of the designation, you can't actually use the CASA designation unless you're a member of SAICA. So yeah, there we have it. They do prescribe adherence to their members to a code of conduct. Those of you that have studied, or you're all studying, but those of you that have studied the Code of Ethics, the International Code of Ethics, SAICA has a code of professional conduct that is based on that code of ethics. And that for me is quite an important thing. So SAICA almost become a not quite regulatory body, but they prescribe the behavior of chartered accountants. There are certain fundamental principles that chartered accountants need to adhere to, including things like integrity and competence and due care and professional behavior, those kinds of things. And SAICA hold that in quite high regard. So as members of SAICA, you're expected to adhere to the code of conduct. Of course, not all CAs do, and in the press recently, over the last couple of years, certainly, we have the likes of Marcus Jooste coming to the fore, and Jacques Wessels, the CA that signed off on Linkway Trading with the whole Gupta Association, the KPMG link there. So there have been a couple of CAs in the press over the last few years that haven't really done much to our reputation as chartered accountants. They are currently going through disciplinary processes, and we're waiting to see what the outcome of that's going to be. There are currently over 50,000 members of SAICA. This includes both local members in South Africa, as well as over 4,000 international members. So quite a big organization. And SAICA's role there really is from a technical support perspective. So SAICA present numerous training interventions to keep CAs up to date and to an accountant. So there are a couple of different legs to this that you would need to go through. The starting point to that is you obtaining a SAICA accredited degree. This would be a BCom degree. There is a slide after this one that goes and shows you the list of universities that are accredited by SAICA to offer this BCom degree. So just interesting there, SAICA accredited. So not all BCom degrees are recognized by SAICA. There are, I think, around 15 universities that do offer degrees, BCom degrees, that are recognized by SAICA. You would need to be obtaining one of those. Having obtained your degree, you would then be required to obtain, again, a SAICA accredited postgraduate qualification. So this, again, there are a number of universities that offer this, including UNISA. So this can be done distance learning, as your accredited degree can also be done through a distance learning basis. But you need to go that one step further. That postgraduate qualification is usually a 1-year program. In some cases, it could be a 2-year program. So again, additional studies. The postgrad qualification basically takes what you've learned in your BCom and ramps it up, quite significantly up. Having passed your postgraduate qualification, you then go and write the first of 2 professional assessments. The first of these is known as the initial test of competence. This is an examination set by SAICA, and irrespective of your university of choice, all postgraduate delegates would end up having to write and pass this initial test of competence. It's essentially targeted at the same syllabus as the postgraduate qualification, so there wouldn't necessarily be additional studying for this. Having obtained your postgrad, you should be in a position to be able to write and pass this initial test of competence. Then at some point in this process, you would need to complete a training contract with an accredited training office. I'll take you through shortly the different environments within which you can find training offices. There are over 700 accredited training offices in South Africa. So there's quite a lot of flexibility there in terms of which training office you choose to go and undertake your training contract. The purpose of the training contract is to take your academic experience and apply it, learn to apply it in a practical context. So SAICA has a training program that you follow, and in that training program, there are a number of competencies that you would need to be able to demonstrate in a practical work-related environment. So the training contract can actually be started at any point in the academic path. So there are some trainees that are starting a training contract, and while they're doing their training contract, they are studying their SAICA accredited degree, obviously part-time distance learning. There are other situations where trainees might wait until they have their degree before they start a training contract. And maybe even in some situations, trainees who wait until they have their postgrad qualification before they start their training contract. Okay, so at some point in this route, you would need to undertake this minimum 3-year training contract with an accredited training office. Then the final stage to be able to become a chartered accountant is to be able to write and pass the second professional examination. This is called the Assessment of Professional Competence, and it's another examination set by SAICA. The kicker with this one is you can only write this examination once you've got at least 20 months of your training contract behind you. And the reasoning behind that is that the second examination is a more practical assessment. So it's not a theoretical assessment like the initial test of competence. You've now got some work experience behind you, and you're now given the opportunity to go and demonstrate that you're able to apply your theory in a practical context. So that's this assessment of professional competence. I see a chat coming through. How long does it take to complete the training contract? It's a minimum of 3 years. I will go through the other options. There is the possibility of going into a 4-year training contract term or even a 5-year training contract term. Ultimately, it's going to boil down to your level of academic progress. So for example, if you have a degree, an accredited BCom degree, then you're able to enter into a 3-year contract. If, for example, you have a non-accredited degree, so perhaps a BCom, but not a recognized BCom by SAICA, or if you have other qualifications, so any other degree or any postgraduate or any diploma, NQF level 6 equivalent diploma, then you'd be heading into a 4-year training contract term. And if you don't have any of that, so your highest qualification is your matric certificate, for example, then you'd be entering into a 5-year training contract term. There is the possibility of reducing that contract term if you obtain your degree during the training contract, and I'll give you a bit of information about that shortly. Okay, so in essence, this is the requirement that you would need to meet to ultimately then become a member of SAICA. Here is the list of accredited universities that offer SAICA accredited BComs. So I hope that your university appears on that. It would be obviously worth your while just speaking to your lecturers and making sure that the BCom degree that you are doing is an accredited BCom degree by SAICA. Many universities offer both. So depending on why you want the BCom, there are options where you could do a non-accredited BCom degree. Maybe you're planning on another career choice, for example. But if you just spend, it's a minute or so. Let me just play this for you. All right, so just a little bit of insight into the BGR network. Just to disclose my interest, I do training for BGR, which is why I've been asked to actually do this presentation for you. I've got a good working relationship with them. They're a really nice environment to consider as a small and SME kind of audit firm environment, should you choose to go into that kind of training environment. Okay, then I did speak about the different contract terms. So I spoke about there being 3, 4, and 5-year contract terms that are different options you can consider. And I did mention that to go into a 3-year training contract would require that you have a SAICA accredited BCom degree. So that's the only situation where you can go into a 3-year training contract. And just important to note, you don't need your postgraduate qualification to enter into a 3-year contract. If you only had your degree, you could then go into a 3-year training contract and study your postgraduate distance learning. The 4-year environment is where you have a degree, but it's not accredited by SAICA. This could be any degree. It wouldn't have to be a BCom degree necessarily. So it could be, I mean, obviously the only accredited degrees by SAICA are BCom degrees from that list of universities that I shared with you. So any other degree, or if you have a tech diploma, for example, if it's at NQF level 6, that's regarded as kind of the equivalent of a degree, that would then enable you to go in and do a 4-year training contract. Obviously, during those 4 years, you'd be converting your non-accredited degree into a SAICA accredited BCom degree. And then the final option, the 5-year contract term, would be where you have as your highest qualification a matric certificate or equivalent, or any other qualification that I haven't yet mentioned. Again, bear in mind, what would influence the decision here. In my mind, a lot of this is to do with your financial position. Can you afford to study full-time? You need to start earning a salary. And there might be some merit if you do need the money to consider entering into a 4 or a 5-year contract and then studying part-time. I mean, you're picking up work experience at the same time. You're potentially finishing your process a little bit earlier because you're completing your training contract at the same time as you're studying. So that's an option to consider. Just remember against that, you're going to need to be a fairly diligent, hardworking person, because to work and study at the same time obviously has its pressures. Okay, but if you feel you can cope with that, then absolutely a 4 or a 5-year contract